Welcome to Fieldcraft Chronicles. Today we're stepping into territory that most survival channels never touch. Not the wilderness, not the battlefield, but the invisible terrain between two people separated by an ocean and a war. Because in World War II, maintaining a marriage across thousands of miles wasn't just an emotional challenge. It was a practiced, deliberate survival strategy, and the men and women who mastered it left behind a fieldcraft of the heart that deserves to be studied with the same seriousness we give to shelter building or fire starting. Imagine a soldier in the Pacific Theatre, mud-caked boots, the distant percussion of artillery rolling across the tree line, reaching into his breast pocket to pull out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the creases from being read 100 times. That letter wasn't just correspondence. It was a psychological anchor, a portable piece of home carried into the most destabilizing environment a human being can inhabit. Couples of the Second World War era understood instinctively what modern psychology would later confirm, that consistent, detailed communication creates what researchers now call cognitive intimacy, a shared mental space that can persist across physical distance. Wives wrote about the neighbour's new fence, the smell of Sunday's pot roast, the way the light looked through the kitchen window in October. Soldiers wrote back about their bunkmates' terrible jokes, the taste of bad coffee, the sound of birds they didn't recognize. None of it was dramatic. All of it was essential. The mundane was the message. The care package was the era's greatest tactical tool of emotional survival. Women assembled them with the focus of a quartermaster. Folded notes tucked between tins of sardines, a handkerchief carrying a trace of familiar perfume, alongside hand-rolled cigarettes and hard candy. These weren't gifts in any conventional sense. They were sensory dispatches, carefully curated to activate memory and maintain the felt reality of a life waiting back home. What makes this remarkable from a fieldcraft perspective is the intentionality behind it. These women had no manual, no precedent on the scale they were navigating. They developed the strategy organically through necessity, and they got extraordinarily good at it. They understood that morale is a resource, as finite and vital as rations, and that it required regular resupply. Perhaps, the most sophisticated survival technique of all was the deliberate construction of a shared future. Couples didn't just endure the present, they engineered an imagined tomorrow, detailed enough to live inside. They wrote about the house they'd buy, the car he'd fix up, the garden she'd already planned in her mind, down to the variety of tomatoes. This wasn't escapism, it was structural. That imagined future functioned as a psychological load-bearing wall, keeping the entire edifice of a person's will to survive upright under conditions designed to collapse it. Modern survivalists talk constantly about the importance of a reason to move, a psychological goal that pulls you through crisis. World War II couples built that reason with ink and paper and extraordinary discipline, tending it through years of uncertainty, the way you'd tend a fire you couldn't afford to let go out. There's a harder, less romantic dimension to this story, and Fieldcraft Chronicles wouldn't be doing its job if we looked away from it. Many couples developed a protective emotional numbness as the separation stretched from months into years. They learned to compartmentalize grief, to function without allowing themselves to fully feel the weight of what was missing. Soldiers describe it in diaries as getting on with it. Wives describe it as keeping busy. Both were forms of deliberate psychological rationing and spending emotional energy only where it could produce results, conserving the rest. This is fieldcraft in its purest form. The same principle that tells a survivor in the wilderness not to panic, not to exhaust resources on emotions that don't serve immediate function, was being applied intuitively by ordinary people to one of the most extraordinary emotional trials in modern history. The world these couples navigated is gone, but the principles they developed are evergreen. In an age of digital communication where distance should feel effortless, relationships still erode under the pressure of absence and distraction. The World War II generation's instinct to make contact deliberate, to share the mundane, to build a shared future with consistent, disciplined attention, is as applicable today as it was in 1943. For the preparedness-minded, there's a deeper lesson here too. True resilience has never been purely physical. The ability to maintain meaningful human bonds under pressure, to keep morale resourced and the future imaginable, is as critical to long-term survival as any bushcraft skill in your kit. If this episode moved you, challenged you, or taught you something worth carrying, share it. Send it to someone who values history, self-reliance, and the quiet courage it takes to keep showing up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles. We're here every week, digging into the strategies, skills, and stories that have kept human beings standing through the worst history could throw at them. The field is always teaching. We just have to be willing to learn, subscribe, share, stay prepared.